Hello and welcome back to the Motorsport Baithak podcast. I'm your host Didi, and joining me today once again is my friend and your co-host Vedant. On this episode, we'll be talking about the Mexico City GP. So let's grab some chai, take our seats, ready opinions, and dive right into the conversation. Hello Vedant, what a weekend in my opinion. But tell me what did you think about the race? Because I thought it was actually very entertaining for me, but most people said that it was a snooze fest. What are your views on the race this weekend?
I mean, see, it's you are very right. Like it was a very entertaining race. I was watching it from what 12:30 a.m. till 2:30 a.m. right, and I did not fall asleep or fall sleepy at any given moment. But then again, the with the lead Max Verstappen had, it seemed like a given race. Like okay, he is going to win it, but there was so much going on behind the scenes, behind Max Verstappen that it was as entertaining as any decent Formula One race can be.
Exactly. I mean, yeah, I'll give it to the viewers that there wasn't a lot of on-track action, especially after the first few laps. But overall, there was a lot going on in the race. There were a lot of battles that were evolving. Yes, out in front, Max had the win from after turn one, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But the race between Sergio Perez and Lewis Hamilton evolved throughout the
That
race.
was brilliant.
There was a
That was
lot
brilliant
going on
racing.
between yes. There was a lot going on between the two Ferraris. Sebastian Vettel making his way through. There's a lot happening in the midfield with Lando Norris, Dan Ricciardo, and Valtteri Bottas. Making their way through the back of the field, and uh, yeah, there's just like so much that was happening, and I felt like. And it usually happens, I get really excited about strategy and everything that's happening behind the scenes, that I almost end up looking at the timing screen for longer than I'm actually looking at the on-track action that is being displayed on the TV screens. But regardless, Max after this race, Max Verstappen extended his lead by another 7 points to 19 points over Lewis Hamilton. Sergio Perez is only 20 points behind Valtteri Bottas, who is third in the driver standings currently, and Red Bull is only 1 point behind Mercedes in the Constructors' Championship with only 4 rounds to go. And with only 4 rounds to go, we might have just 3 rounds. The way Saudi Arabia is coming up, but we'll
Yeah.
talk about that later. But I think the biggest takeaway from this weekend was the love for Perez in Mexico. We always talk about the Tifosi in Italy. The people in red who come out in Monza. We always talk about the British fans at Silverstone, but what a crowd in Mexico! You have to give it to them. They are just as good as any other crowd anywhere else in the world. And how much love was there for Perez and just his entire family there, and the happiness on Perez's dad's face. That was just priceless this weekend. And the post-race celebrations were just insane, in my opinion. What did you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Checo's dad was probably happier than Max Verstappen will be when he wins the championship, right? But that was so heartwarming to see. We don't see many, like the parents or the families of many drivers, and especially, for them to show, like, be involved with the team and show emotion basically and celebrate with the team, right? So this was pretty brilliant. And for Sergio Perez to, like, we don't see many Mexican drivers, but the Mexican Grand Prix is an iconic race in the calendar. So for Sergio Perez to finally get that podium, and for the fans to finally get that that kick and that excitement, it was brilliant. And especially the Mexican GP, the podium in Mexico City is so special because it's in that baseball stadium sort of thing, and that it just creates a huge atmosphere, and that was just brilliant, as you said.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right. And I think the last time, we saw a family or any family, single family member show so much emotion was back when Felipe Massa won the World Drivers Championship for
For a few
less than
minutes,
a
yeah.
minute, and then
Yeah.
lost it. That was the last time
Yeah,
we saw so much emotion on any family
absolutely.
member's face. But I'm pretty sure when Sergio Perez said, "Now time for some tequila" at the when he was standing on his car, I'm pretty sure he was speaking for each and every Mexican F1 fan who
Yeah.
was there or watching, or who was watching the F1 race this weekend. But yeah, let's get into the nitty gritty now. Let's analyze some of the performance from this weekend. Let's talk about Mercedes. What a qualifying masterclass from Mercedes. No one saw that coming. They didn't have great practice sessions. They were about 4 tenths behind the nearest Red Bull. But what a qualifying masterclass. You have to give it to Valtteri Bottas. Ever since he's announced his move to Alfa Romeo, he's been on fire. But that man just can't catch a break, can he? But let's talk about the lap one, turn one incident, and the fact that, in my opinion, Mercedes bet their success on this weekend on one lap pace and track position. The fact that it seemed like Mercedes had set up their car for qualifying, and they were lacking race pace so much compared to the Red Bulls, went to show that Mercedes thought that track position will be absolutely essential to win the race. And I think that is what caused the lap one, turn one incident, where Valtteri Bottas almost he didn't squeeze, first of all, Max Verstappen enough towards the outside of the track, to make it difficult for him to go around the outside. And secondly, I think he slowed down a little bit too much to give Lewis Hamilton, the first position going into turn one, or a better line going into turn one, if you want to put it that way. And I think that is what caused the lap one, turn one incident. And I feel that if Valtteri Bottas had put his foot in and went through the turn, maybe they would have been 3 wide through turns 1 and 2. But that might have ended better for Mercedes at the end of the day. And whatever strategy that Mercedes put regarding that turn one, how they were going to approach turn one, is what backfired and led to them losing position to a scintillating move by Max Verstappen, just so late on the brakes and just making it through the corner at an insane pace. But what are your thoughts on the way the lap one, turn one incident unfolded?
I mean, definitely, as you said, had Valtteri Bottas, put his foot in and just went for the corner and not given Max any space. Even if Max had attempted the overtake, firstly, Valtteri would have avoided being hit by Daniel Ricciardo, right? And secondly, Max would have been squeezed in turn two and pushed off the track. So that would have been a major win for Mercedes. But I mean, it's interesting to me because we talk about the first corner being so late and the starting straight being so long in Russia. I did not see a single comment anywhere which talked about that the Mexican first corner is so far away, and the slipstream effect can cause major overtakes. But I was anticipating it, and I knew if Max Verstappen got even a decent start, even a start equal to Valtteri Bottas, he will make that overtake, and that's just what happened.
I mean, Max Verstappen actually did not have a better start than either of the two Mercedes. I think there was a real-time comparison shown between the starts of Valtteri Bottas, Lewis Hamilton, and Max Verstappen. And Max Verstappen,
yeah, Max was slowest. Yeah,
his reaction time was like 3 or 400 slower than that of the two Mercedes driver. But obviously, the toe effect was just a little bit too much for the two Mercedes to be able to keep the Red Bull behind. But yeah, obviously, I think Valtteri Bottas and the way he approached turn one is almost obviously. I'm not saying that Max Verstappen did not have a role in how he took the lead from the two Mercedes. Going into turn one, obviously he had to be ballsy and he had to have the courage to put his car through that turn one at such a speed. But I think Valtteri Bottas could have done much more, and even he could have even avoided the collision with Daniel Ricciardo. Yes, obviously Daniel Ricciardo locked up, and he didn't stop his car as soon as he could because of the lockup. But I think it also plays a role because a lot of people came out and said that Daniel Ricciardo should have been penalized, and they didn't agree with the FIA that it was a racing incident. But in my eyes, it was just a racing incident because lockups happen going into turn one. Especially lap one, the brakes are pretty cold, and we saw how long the cars were sitting on the grid, especially the top 6, top 7 cars, how long they were sitting on the grid after the formation lap before the start. So I'm not really surprised there, and I don't really agree with anyone who says that Daniel Ricciardo should have been penalized. But yeah, obviously, very, very disheartening for Valtteri Bottas. And throughout the race, he just couldn't catch a break. And what is it with that McLaren? It's almost like the McLaren aero is optimized to mess up the Mercedes every time they're behind the McLaren cars. Valtteri Bottas just couldn't find a way past Daniel Ricciardo for the entirety of the race after having been tagged by Daniel Ricciardo in the first place. So very frustrating weekend for Valtteri Bottas in that particular fashion. And then Valtteri was pitted twice at the end of the race just so that he could get that fastest lap point off of Max Verstappen. So I think Mercedes pitted him the first time, and then Valtteri couldn't get the fastest lap, and there was some games going on between Max and Valtteri. Max was trying to keep Valtteri from posting his fastest lap or something like that, and then that could have been dangerous for Max. But thankfully, both of them raced respectfully. On track, and nothing happened. But it was kind of sketchy when Max was playing those games with Valtteri, and I think Christian Horner was not happy about it when he came on the radio, and Max's race engineer was a bit worried too. But what's happening with Valtteri Bottas? He's been pretty good, put it on pole, and we thought that Valtteri Bottas might just keep Mercedes ahead in the constructors championship, but now they're as close as they've ever been to Red Bull in the constructors.
Yeah, it's. I mean, over the years, we have just come to realize that. I mean, I don't want to call him that, but Valtteri Bottas is sort of an enigma right now, because he performs super well at places, right, in that Mercedes, and then he has his slumps and he has his moments. So, I mean, I don't know what it is, but next year, hopefully, in Alfa Romeo, he'll have a fresh start. He'll have a different role, a leadership role, and a completely different environment. So hopefully he can get his batteries recharged, as we talked about earlier.
Absolutely. But now let's talk about Red Bull. A seamless Sunday for RBR. After a rocky qualifying, it was a seamless Sunday for Red Bull Racing. Checo becoming the first Mexican to be on the podium in his home race. But the big question is, did Red Bull squander a potential 1-2? Now, Vedant, I was on WhatsApp with you, and the entire time I was like, Checo needs to undercut Lewis Hamilton in order to get that P2, and I was basically, the texting equivalent of shouting the same thing over and over again for the entirety of the first half of the race. And when Checo didn't undercut Lewis Hamilton, I know it would be really really difficult for Checo, regardless of whatever tire strategy offset they do towards the end of the race. It would have been really difficult for Checo to overtake Lewis Hamilton just because of that third sector at the Mexico City at the racetrack, which makes it so difficult to follow, and then it's almost impossible to overtake on the straight, and which is why track position is important. But yeah, what are your thoughts? Do you think Red Bull did all they could, or could they have still done better and gotten a 1-2 finish this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, see, the undercut would have certainly worked, and as we talked about, and as other teams did make it work. But I think when they were trying to undercut Hamilton, when they were planning it, Perez just came on and said that, okay, my tires are just getting better and better, right? So I think the driver feedback gets important when they're planning the strategy. And I mean, I don't know, that may be the feedback that led them to not make that call. So,
and I guess, yeah, fair enough. But in my opinion, Red Bull did squander what was a high chance of a 1-2 finish this weekend with Checo Perez and competing with Lewis Hamilton. And I think going into the weekend, Andrew Seidel said that you only have to be a second faster than the car ahead in order to overtake. But I think the more important factor was that you still have to be close enough to the car ahead, which Checo couldn't manage at any given point of time. I think the closest he ever came to Lewis Hamilton was on the last lap. Going into the start-finish straight, he was like 7/10 behind Lewis Hamilton, but that was even that was too far behind for Checo to overtake Lewis Hamilton. And obviously we know that the Mercedes is a bit faster by itself on the straights, which makes it even more harder to overtake, regardless the DRS around Mexico. But regardless, I think Red Bull still had a great finish. The fact that Valtteri Bottas was out of the points, really really helped Red Bull. So I mean, oh yeah, almost. I was about to say this. Daniel Ricciardo finally helping his previous team. Maybe win a World Constructors Championship out here.
Yeah.
But let's get on to this other issue that happened with Red Bull this weekend. The qualifying mishap in Q3 and the Tsunoda comments. Whose fault was it really, Vedant? Who do you think was at fault, and what do you think about the comments that Christian Horner and Helmut Marko made about Tsunoda? And should Red Bull be thankful to Tsunoda after how the weekend really turned out, starting from P3 and P4 for Max and Checo?
Yeah. Well, that's in hindsight, that's pretty straightforward, right? But I think Tsunoda did not do any wrong as such. He maybe made a mistake by not letting them through fast enough as such. But I think, that was not a major mistake as such, I guess. But especially Christian Horner's comments were uncalled for, in my opinion. Especially, when that driver is in your roster, when that driver is in your junior program and in basically in your family, right? So you don't expect Toto Wolff to make such comments about George Russell when George Russell does not let Lewis Hamilton by during during blue flags or something, right? So I did not rewatch that incident per se, so I can't really make.
So basically, what happened was, I think it was after the second straight, so I think turn 3 and 4, I think it was, or something like that. Or might have been later. I don't remember which turn exactly. So basically, Sergio and Max were approaching Yuki Tsunoda, who had given a tow to his teammate Pierre Gasly, and instead of being on track and potentially being in the way of the two Red Bulls, Tsunoda took evasive action and went off track onto the runoff and kicked up a lot of dust, and that apparently led to Sergio Perez getting distracted and going off track too, which led to Max Verstappen backing off his flying lap. Now, firstly, it's hard to say, especially after only one sector, that Max Verstappen had or did not have the pace to beat Lewis Hamilton's or Valtteri Bottas's pole position time. But I do think it's not the first time that a driver has an off or something, and there's other people on their flying lap. So the fact that Tsunoda took evasive action and Checo got distracted is really I wouldn't say Checo's fault, but I think it's not the first time that someone else has an off while you're on your flying lap. So I think Checo should have been more focused or whatever, or it's. I don't think it's really Tsunoda's fault at all, and I think I agree with Tsunoda when he said he did all he could, or he took the best course of action that he could, and there were no yellow flags waved before, because Tsunoda was in control of the car and he was, going over the tarmac or the runoff tarmac and then over the grass. So it was really the two Red Bulls who had to take the matter into their own hands and carry on with their lap and not get distracted with what was happening in front of them. But it happened what happened, and obviously
even more importantly, the Mercedes did set faster lap times in the first run, and even when you compare the first sector of those final runs, I think Valtteri Bottas did better his first sector. He set a purple sector in the final run as well. So he was potentially going faster than Max Verstappen as it is. So
yeah, but no one ended up being faster, because I think the track got hotter and the way the track evolved, or the track got hotter and became really hard to manage the tires.
No one improved their times, but
yeah, exactly.
Valtteri Bottas was improving his time at that point, right?
Yeah, and Max and Sergio were like a tenth down on Valtteri Bottas's first run time anyway during the final run. So yeah, and obviously what Sergio and Helmut Marko, not Sergio, sorry, what Christian Horner and Helmut Marko said was uncalled for. I can understand, the comments coming from Sergio Perez and Max Verstappen in the heat of the moment, but afterwards, I think it was a little uncalled for, and I think maybe they'll sort it out. But I think as long as Franz Tost, is supportive to Yuki Tsunoda, I think they'll be fine. Nothing more there, to really talk about. And I think people calling for Helmut Marko and Christian Horner. Uh, I mean, whatever they're saying on social media is also a little uncalled for because things happen. They're gonna
Yeah.
forget it after the end of the season. And I don't think Yuki. Yuki has a great supporting team. He's got a great team behind him, and I think he'll be fine too. But that was the fight for top two, and it's been 20 minutes, and we've been talking about that, and we have the whole grid to talk about. What a weekend it has been, and people were saying it was boring. Let's talk about Ferrari. Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz finished P5 and P6 and lead McLaren for the first time in a long time by 13.5 points in the Constructors' Championship with only 4 rounds to go. I think it was the best that they could have asked for. Pierre Gasly was in a class of his own this weekend. So as long as the two Ferraris finished P5, P6, I think that was the most they could have taken out from this weekend. Obviously Daniel Ricciardo had split the two Ferraris during qualifying with Lando Norris's help. But I think there's not much more that Ferrari could ask for. What confused me though was the fact that why did Sainz split a second time? Was it because he was trying to get the fastest lap? Because Sainz was ahead of Charles Leclerc towards the end of the race, right? And then he ended up finishing behind Charles, so he must have pitted, or
No,
or did he have an off or something?
no. So Charles Leclerc did, like, Charles Leclerc gave Sainz the place because Sainz had pitted some 10, 11 laps later
Yep.
to try and get
Pierre Gasly.
Pierre Gasly. And I think at the end they swapped places again so that Leclerc could finish ahead.
Oh, okay.
Because
I
he
was
gave
I
the
was
place.
really confused. Okay, I
Yeah.
was really confused as to what happened. But it was really uncharacteristic that Charles Leclerc was struggling on the hard tires. Usually we have seen Carlos struggle in the Ferrari, with hard tires, to make them last. But it was Charles Leclerc this weekend who was really struggling on the hard compound tires, whereas Carlos Sainz had decent pace. I never thought Carlos had enough pace to challenge Pierre. I mean, it seemed when he came out of the pits that he could have challenged Pierre, but once he started putting the laps in, he wasn't really quick around the lap, and he wasn't gaining on Pierre more than a tenth or 2 tenths every lap.
Yeah,
So
but I
there's
mean,
just
crucially, Charles Leclerc was just a handful of 3-4 seconds behind Pierre, right? But during that swap, they lost a lot of time, and I think
Charles
that caused
Charles
them.
didn't let Carlos through very easily.
Yeah.
He waited quite a few laps before he let he let Carlos through. But it's okay. I mean, I don't see a Ferrari overtaking that AlphaTauri of Pierre Gasly around the Mexico City track at any given point. Really, it was really hard to overtake, and I don't think it would have been possible anyway. But it would have been nice to see some on-track action though. But regardless, McLaren disastrous weekend for Daniel Ricciardo after what was a pretty good qualifying from him, and but a great recovery drive from Lando Norris to get that solitary point in P10. McLaren really have a task at their hands if they want to finish P3 in the constructors this year, don't they?
Absolutely, they do. I mean, they have been operationally the better team in the first part of the season, but Ferrari's performance have just taken it away from McLaren, and I think, I mean, it's going to be a good fight. Don't get me wrong, but I think Ferrari have it in the bag because they have a 13 and a half points lead right now, and with only 4 races to go, it's and the competitiveness of these two teams, fundamentally, it's going to be very tricky for McLaren to catch back.
You say that about McLaren, but would you say that the same thing about Lewis Hamilton, who's trailing Max Verstappen by 19 points right now?
Oh no, I believe Max Verstappen has already sealed the championship, bar any DNF.
Wow. Oh, okay, bar and India. Okay,
Yeah.
we'll circle back to that after we're done going down this list. We'll circle back to that. And obviously, I got to ask you the question. Max or Lewis at the end of this podcast. But before we get there, Alpine is now tied with AlphaTauri on points in the constructors' championship, but are ahead in the championship because of Esteban Ocon's win earlier in the season in Hungary. Both teams are at 106 points. I think it was a great drive from Fernando Alonso to finish P9 this weekend after Alpine didn't really have any pace, at any given point of time. And AlphaTauri, faultless weekend for Pierre Gasly, goes to show what we say this every weekend. We just repeat ourselves saying that AlphaTauri has that pace, and finally, Pierre Gasly puts a weekend together and finishes P4 like
P4, yeah.
we've expected him to do, and what a qualifying performance too from him. And Tsunoda just getting unlucky with that lap one, turn one incident again. But again, nothing separates these two teams, and I think the ball's in AlphaTauri's court. They could really finish P5 with the way Alpine has been struggling for pace over the last few weekends.
Yeah, definitely. And I think Yuki Tsunoda had a unlucky weekend, as you said, but with his recent form and with the confidence that he has gained over the past, a month and a half, I think AlphaTauri are in a much stronger position because they have the better car than Alpine as it is. And
I would say that for like the entirety of the season, we never expected AlphaTauri and Alpine to be so close in the first place. We always expected AlphaTauri to be competing with
ahead,
McLaren and Ferrari, and not with Alpine. So this is not surprising, but yeah, operationally they haven't been the best team on the grid, which is why they are in the position they are in right now.
Absolutely. And again, so we have the top two in constructors, then we have the next two in constructors, and then we have these two in the constructors championship. It's going to be a mega 4 weeks now.
Absolutely. And now Aston Martin, Stroll really winning his weekend in Q1. That cost him the entire weekend. And then the strategy didn't work out for him either. But Sebastian Vettel had... He had a good drive, he struggled a little bit on the hard tires towards the end, but finishing P7 in what was, I would say, like an unchallenged drive. Like, he didn't get challenged by any driver for position. He was challenging Antonio Giovinazzi in the opening stages of the race after the lap one, turn one incident, when Giovinazzi was running, in front of Carlos, and then he got overtaken by Seb and Carlos, or he pitted before Seb could overtake him, really. But yeah, great drive from Vettel, and I think a great performance for him to make the strategy work that he was on. But other than that, not really much to talk about there. About Aston Martin's performance this weekend, they have been lacking pace throughout the entirety of the season. Hopefully, they'll be better next year. Similarly for Williams, I think after what was a great mid-season performance from them, at Austria and Spa, it's been pretty quiet, and they lacked pace throughout the weekend too. George Russell capitalized on the lap one, turn one incident, and he was in the point scoring position, but he could not maintain that given the pace of his car this weekend, which is a bit disheartening, especially given the fact that I was scoring a lot of points in F1 fantasy with George Russell on my team, so I was kind of sad about that. But yeah, anything from you, Vedant, regarding Aston Martin or Williams? I think they're going to finish where they are, and that'll be that. Not much for them for the last 4 races.
Absolutely. Sebastian Vettel with that P7, I think he bagged 6 points from this weekend, and that's about as much I was expecting from them for the entirety of the 5 races, basically. So yeah, I guess they exceeded my expectations, but yeah. They can't challenge the AlphaTauri and Alpines now because they are way ahead, right? And Williams and Alfa Romeo are quite some margin below. So I think Aston Martin can enjoy themselves and just focus on next year right now. They don't have to fight anymore, basically.
Absolutely, and I think this, I think the surprise of the weekend for me was Alfa Romeo. They had great race pace.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially at the lap one, turn one incident, both Kimi Räikkönen and Antonio Giovinazzi found themselves in the points. And I think Antonio had great race pace, but he struggled to make that strategy work. And I think Antonio pitted really early. I think he pitted around lap 13 or 14, something like that. Before the 20 lap mark, and I think anyone and everyone who was on that strategy could not make it work, whether that was Daniel Ricciardo, whether that was Valtteri Bottas. Well, they had their incidents, obviously, but I think Esteban Ocon also pitted early, and none of those people could make that strategy work. But Kimi Räikkönen finishing P8, scoring points for Alfa Romeo in his in the closing stages of his F1 career, and I don't know how many more times we're gonna see this happen. But yeah, that was great, and I thought Antonio Giovinazzi had a great opportunity this weekend, but I think whatever the strategy call was, whoever made that strategy call really squandered the chances of Alfa Romeo getting a great bag of points this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, no, for Kimi to bow out with a few handful of points, I think it's great. But talking about the two-stop strategy, I think it's pretty interesting, basically, because I think in France there was a clear division between teams using a one-stopper and a two-stopper. I may be wrong. It may be some other circuit, but I remember the two-stopper not when there is a clear division, like a bunch of teams using either of them. The two-stopper did not work. The only time the two-stopper has worked is when everyone's on the one-stopper and Mercedes or Red Bull have used a two-stopper. So I mean, it's an interesting observation. I really don't know a lot about the Formula One tires and the integrity and how those strategies work. But yeah, it's just an observation from my end.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought, yeah, but I guess everyone suffered on that strategy. However, I think the takeaway for Alfa Romeo is that they scored some points this weekend, and it'll be nice for the team. Haas again, not much from them except the fact that Nikita and Mick again had like a tussle during qualifying. I think Nikita got overtaken by Mick or something, and then he complained to his race engineer, and his race engineer basically snubbed him, and Nikita wasn't really happy with that. Um, Again, even if they have a great car next year, even if they have a lower midfield car to challenge the likes of maybe Aston Martin or Alpine, this year, I just don't see that duo working at all, and I just don't see where will Mick go from there on, given the fact that Alfa Romeo will most likely not have a seat for Mick, um, with the way things are looking. So it'll be interesting to see how that Haas team, not just the two drivers, but how that Haas team evolves over the next 3 years. If there's a change in ownership, if there's a change in team principal, I don't know. I mean, I'm not a team principal, but it's hard to see Gunther Steiner having success with the current team that he's commanding, or unless there's a Gunther Steiner is replaced by someone else. It almost seems like a Cyril Abiteboul situation with the Haas team there, with Gunther Steiner at the helm of that
Yeah.
particular project.
Yeah, I mean, Haas have found themselves in a very tricky situation, uh, and I think this entire season, obviously, they have written off. But I mean, in 2016, if you remember, they started their F1, you know, the journey in F1 on a very high note in 2016, and then with the Rich Energy fiasco, and now this season, so it's pretty strange. But as you said, I don't see these two drivers working together, because like if next season they are contending for points, it's going to be a great embarrassment in my opinion, because if they can't even cooperate when they are not scoring points, how can we expect them to respect each other and cooperate when they are scoring points and fighting for points basically? So it's going to be a very tricky situation next year, even if they get a good car, even if they don't get a good car. Like
Yeah,
overall, for
yeah.
and for the future of the brand as well.
Yeah, and I share the same view, which is why I think I'm gonna ask this question, and I think not a lot of people are asking this question currently. Is does if Gene Haas is planning to stay in Formula One, does he need to find a new team principal?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. I don't have that answer right now.
I
I
mean,
don't.
Gunther Steiner
Yeah.
has had success, but after the first year, I don't think he's managed the team very well. He couldn't manage Kevin Magnussen and Roman Grosjean. He's unable to manage Nikita Mazepin and Mick Schumacher at the moment. Do you think just your gut feeling? What do you think? Do you think Gunther Steiner needs to be replaced in the sport?
Well, I mean, see,
He and don't forget the fact that he's done enough to keep the team afloat.
yeah, right. That's right. See, I can't say if he needs to be replaced or not, but at the end of the day, if they need change, and if Gene Haas wants to maintain complete control of the company, I think they need change. They need change in leadership. Now, be it with Gunter Steiner being replaced altogether, or be it, a change in the structure of how the organization works, like McLaren have done in the recent past. So something like that might need to happen. Obviously, their relationship with Ferrari is a key aspect to it, and they have gotten people from Ferrari to work for them now, and all these things, right? So it's going to be interesting how Gene Haas does his decision making, because I think this year was a write off. Obviously, next year, as I have said earlier, if they don't get it right next year, it is going to be a very tricky time for Haas. Like, it's going to be worse than this
Absolutely.
year.
Yep. Enough about Haas anyway. I want to circle back to the question I asked you earlier about Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton. You said, you have already written off the season to Max Verstappen as long as Red Bull does not have reliability issues. And I kind of agree with you there. But given Max Verstappen's luck this season so far, and Lewis Hamilton's propensity to
Yeah.
do the absolutely impossible sometimes, uh, or as some people just put it to his being a little too lucky. I wouldn't write off the season, but yeah, I just want to hear more from you about this particular thing.
Yeah. I mean, see, it's interesting because everyone I talk to says that Hamilton can still win it, and believe me, I know Hamilton can still win it, but see, Max Verstappen has been on an entire different tangent this season, right? Be it the car, be it his performance. I think that number 33 Red Bull and the driver in it have been phenomenal. Because if you see, Max Verstappen has had a few DNFs and he still leads the championship by 20 points. Now that is no mean feat.
Absolutely.
So I think that it just comes down to that. Even if Mercedes have a better car for the next four races, Max Verstappen as a driver, I believe, is performing better, and his lead itself is substantial enough to hold Lewis Hamilton back.
Fair enough. But we do want a close championship fight.
Absolutely.
I don't know if I wanted to go down to Abu Dhabi, to be honest, because it'll be really hard for me to watch the race, especially if I'm all by myself. But regardless, yeah, it's been pretty crazy so far, and I think both teams have done everything to give Max and Lewis the chance to win the world championship. Like even this weekend, Max had a damaged rear wing, which was then swapped out with Checo's rear wing, and
Yeah.
Checo was given the damaged rear wing during qualifying and the race. And similarly, Valtteri Bottas has made all sorts of compromise to allow Lewis Hamilton to score as many points as possible. But yeah, that's really all about this weekend. And I don't think I need to ask you what. Well, I don't think I need to ask you the question anymore whether you want Max to win or Lewis to win, because you've already written off the season. So that's a big L for me, I guess. But yeah, regardless, in other news, there was debate about engine allocation per driver rising due to the number of engine penalties given out during this weekend. But I think the fact that there were so many engine penalties this weekend made the race even more interesting, with Lando Norris and Lance Stroll trying to come through the field. I think that was a lot more exciting. And I think the race would have been way more boring if Lando Norris had started up front, maybe, um and not had the pace, compared to the Ferraris and the AlphaTauris. What are your thoughts on the engine allocation? Do you think three engines is enough, especially with F1 pushing 25 races in a couple of years, or should they be increasing the number of engine allocations? Because you know, I think the mantra behind uh, F1 having three engines per driver throughout the season is to push reliability. It's just an engineering challenge, and if they increase the number of engines, that the way that the way that engineering challenge will come about is in terms of pushing more and more performance out of the engines, because you're not using them for as long as possible throughout the entirety of the season.
Yeah,
And I
but
think with teams pushing performance of their components, I think they're going to be engine penalties regardless of how
yeah,
many engines, F1 promises the teams for every season.
yeah. I mean, I was coming exactly to that. Even if they, you know, raise the limit, even if they give five engines for the 23-25 races, I think there will still be engine penalties given out even in the middle of the season and throughout the second half. And that just, I mean, it is obviously only because they'll try to maximize the performance. They'll try to push the engine out as long as they can, and just uh, stuff like that. And because yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, no debate there for me at
yeah.
least. And there was a contract extension announced for the Chinese Grand Prix until 2025, but it is important to remember that F1 will not be visiting China in 2022. So the only time we'll see China again is in 2023 alongside Qatar. And is that 25 races now? Because uh, we have next year's calendar, and Qatar is not on next year's calendar. And then
But
next year we have
I think
23 races.
quota is quota's
Well,
contract is coming to an end.
yeah, but
to-
quota is also on next year's calendar and it's still not confirmed, right? So we still have 23 races next year, and if all those races stay on the calendar, we'll definitely have 25 races in 2023. So that is big news. You can see the F1 master plan coming together, and the way it is. In more news, F1 news, apparently Kevin Magnussen was offered the second Williams seat. I'll believe Kevin. There's no reason for him to say otherwise. But whatever, doesn't really matter. We're gonna see Alex Albon on the grid next year. So yeah. But Vedant, this season has been so exciting that we're almost forgetting some of the big headlines from this year, which were all the rage a few months ago. Whether that was Kimi's retirement, whether that was George's move to Mercedes, and all these headlines have really simmered down in the wake of the championship battle that we're having, and that is how exciting F1 really is right now. But the question going towards the end of the season is, are we gonna have a race in Saudi Arabia in a month's time?
Yeah,
Or
I
in
mean,
3
see,
weeks?
Michael Massey was in Jeddah like last week, and I think he said there's still a lot to do in the construction of the Saudi Arabia's like on the circuit, and with the images that we have seen that F1 put up in that video and that the magazines and the websites put up, it's going to be tricky. But I believe if they can get the track complete and if they can get the pits complete, I think they'll have a circuit. So I think the priority will be that the fans
I'm pretty
can
sure the Mercedes
sit
team
back at
is
home.
praying for that. I'm pretty sure the Mercedes team is praying for
Yeah.
the Saudi circuit to be complete, because they want as many races as possible to claw back the advantage, or claw back the lead in the drivers' championship, and get an advantage in the constructors' championship. But in our own news, the F1 Fantasy, the Motorsport Baithak F1 Fantasy league has never been closer. Only 0.5 points separate the top two contenders in our fantasy league. One of them being us, obviously, and then there's this other contender, Guru Datta J, who's only 0.5 points behind us. So it's going to be an exciting last 4 races for us to for our fantasy people. But yeah, that's really all regarding F1 from me this weekend. Vedant, I'm gonna let you take over, and why don't you go over the other motorsport news that our fans really should know?
All right. Well, the NASCAR Cup Series Championship came to a close last weekend, and Kyle Larson won his first championship with Hendrick Motorsports, who extended their record to 14 championships in the NASCAR Cup Series. And now that is incredible. But that's all from NASCAR. I don't watch NASCAR much, but I have that headline. But the World Endurance Championship finale was last year, the 8 hours of Bahrain, and Toyota obviously absolutely dominated the event. The number 8 Toyota of Boemi, Brendan Hartley, and Kuzuki Nakajima won the race, but Mike Conway, Kamui Kobayashi, and Jose Maria Lopez won the championship. because they have been exceptional. And I want to see that number 7 Toyota, especially, Mike Conway and Kamil Kobayashi, win Le Mans. They haven't done so yet. Then, of course, the GTE fight went down to the absolute wire. I think before the final round, there was just a handful of points separating the two teams, Ferrari and Porsche. Yeah, of course, and Porsche Motorsport. But on the last lap, a Ferrari hit a Porsche and the Porsche spun around. And that was that. Ferraris won the championship. That was incredible. And Porsche did raise a protest against Ferrari, which was obviously rejected straight away. And there was not. I mean, that is what happens in multi-class racing, right? You never know who will hit you. And we have seen GTE racing close, and we have seen GTE racing super close. And what a season it has been.
I mean, we see GT racing in general, and we saw what happened in DTM earlier in the year.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, not surprising at all.
Yeah. Then Team WRT won the LMP2 title. After winning in Le Mans, they won both the Bahrain races, the 6-hour last weekend and the 8-hour this weekend. And that's about it from last weekend. But World Endurance Championship had their post-season rookie test. There were 18 cars participating, and now there were a lot of big names, rookie names, and there were a lot of current drivers driving for just development purposes. But one name, and I mean 3 names that I want to mention are obviously Sebastian Ogier, the 7-time WRC champion, and he'll most likely become 8-time WRC champion this season. He tested for Toyota, for whom he races in WRC, and he said that he will consider switching to endurance racing if he can get a LMP2 seat, because I think he has declared that he won't be racing rally for next season onwards. So let's see how that goes ahead. The Richard Mille Racing team, which features obviously an all-female lineup, gave the testing seat to Jamie Chadwick and Alice Powell, the winner and runner-up of W Series, and a French driver, Liliu Vaudoux, if I'm pronouncing that right. I don't have much clue where she drives and where she competes, but it's great to see all-female, like another all-female crew basically testing, and it will be great if they can bring in a second car next season. So yeah, that's all from the WEC finale as well from my side.
Thank you, Vedant, for giving us that rundown. It has been a long podcast, and I'm sure there's a lot of questions we want to cover, but there's only so much time in the day, and there's only so much even the audience only has so much time in the day to listen to us chat about stuff. That's only really important to us, really. So, but yeah, thank you for joining me once again, and thank you to all the listeners for listening to us talk about random stuff, basically. But yeah, thank you, and we'll catch you on the next one. Let's enjoy the season, and I am so excited. I mean, a triple header towards the end of the season is an absolute dream, especially the way the season is going.
Absolutely. And with Brazil next week and the sprint race and the history of sprint races that we have with Hamilton and Verstappen colliding in both the earlier Grand Prix, it's going to be incredible.
And like I said last week, there's only one there's only one result that has not happened with the collisions that happened during a sprint race weekend, which is Hamilton having a DNF. So if that happens, Max Verstappen will actually seal the championship before the last race of the season. But yeah, once again, thank you, Vedant. Thank you to our audience, and we'll catch you on the next one.